correctly with the correct amount.
D20 Radio, where gamers roll.
www.d20radio.com.
Welcome to Me and Steve Talk RPGs, a podcast where me and my friend Steve try and help you get the most out of your role-playing game experience. Hey folks, welcome back to Me and Steve Talk RPGs, and well, I'm the only Steve here at the moment because of various reasons, but we are going to have a fun show tonight, and I've got some friends here to talk RPGs with, and they're not named Steve yet, anyway. But
been called worse.
So
we'll get there.
You hear a voice or voices. Normally, this is where we shout out another podcast on the D20 Radio Network, and we're sort of going to do that. But instead of me shouting out the How We Roll podcast, I'll just introduce 2/3 of the team. That being the voices you just heard, Daryl and Robert.
Hey everybody, Daryl here.
Hello, everybody. Robert over here.
Hey. So, I mean, welcome to the network first.
Thank you.
You know, I had a feeling that it was forthcoming because I knew you had started the show, and well, I met you at Gamer Nation Con, so I figured that was happening, and then I just figured it was a matter of the powers that be at the network were probably just a little busy with this little convention thing, so it didn't officially happen till after that, which seems to have been the case.
There was that, and I asked Chris at the post-con dinner and got the thumbs up, and when I came home, I noticed, I never sent him the message on Discord saying we hit our 3 episodes and we're still going.
Wow.
Yeah, it was sitting right there. I just hadn't hit enter.
Yes, Daryl's is very much our communications guy.
Well, see, I am prone to do things like that, so I find that, well, quite frankly, quite funny, just because that is the type of thing that I would do.
Oh yeah, I was sitting here going, okay, well, I told Chris that we had our 3 episodes, but I assumed just like you did. Oh well, with the con coming up, he's just swamped. I'll ask him at the dinner.
Mm-hmm.
And then I came home and
Yeah. So like, we actually shadowed you out a few episodes back, but I've listened to / watched because you also do a YouTube version of your show.
We do.
But I
Very
listened to / watched most of them. I know I haven't watched the most recent one, which I think, as we're speaking, was the Alien one.
It is.
That is the most recent until the 28th. Just a couple hours ago, we recorded our next one, which sneak preview is rewards in terms of loot and XP and balancing that so it's not too little, not too much.
Yep, we had a fun discussion there.
Yeah, that sounds good. That is a thing, right? And it depends on the system because some systems are so much more gear driven than others. But yeah,
you don't want to give the players an I win button.
But
Right?
you also don't want them to be like squeezing blood out of a stone to get anything.
Not usually, unless that's kind of the theme. But, that's a whole different, like, sort of a separate conversation on its own. But, like, I feel like your show and our show are similar in ways other than a little different just because of the people involved, right? Like, y'all's perspective is different than mine and Steve's, but we're both kind of, a lot of our discussions aren't necessarily centered around any specific system. It's more about larger concepts in play and GMing and the hobby in general.
Yeah, you're hitting the nail on the head, definitely.
Yeah, we do find ourselves probably more often than we would like drifting into using the Star Wars RPG as an example because that's been our bread and butter in the group for years.
Yeah, it was
But as we've
actually
been
our
branching
first
out,
episode.
yeah, as we've been branching out into playing more games, we're like, okay, let's not just say Star Wars every time.
Yeah, and then besides just general concept, we'll sometimes just touch on a game system like we did with Aliens. Yeah, we like to, at least with our concept, give examples in all the systems we're doing, all the campaigns we have.
Yeah, well, I think you guys too have kind of a, what do you want to say, unique approach with it because, and I know this somewhat from having met and conversed with you guys, that you guys kind of run a, I don't know, would you call it a gaming club slash meetup type thing down there in the greater Dallas area?
It did start on Meetup, and the origins really came. I wish Nick were with us. Oh, that sounded horrible. It made it sound like he died.
No,
But
no, Nick is probably sleeping.
So that
um,
aneurysm that was impending during the movie game finally caught up with him.
yes, but Nick began a dedicated Star Wars RPG meetup group. And that's how I first encountered Nick. I know that's how Robert first encountered Nick. I had friends who were players in one of Nick's Star Wars campaigns, and they knew that I was looking at starting one using the old West End game system.
Hmm.
And they said, "Hey, we're in a game that's run by this guy out of his house, and he's about to start a new campaign. Here's the meetup. You should join in." And that's been 10 years ago.
Hmm.
Yeah, and
And
I
Nick likes to,
joined. Sorry, good.
oh, I was going to say, Nick likes to say that that meetup group is simultaneously the largest and smallest dedicated Star Wars RPG meetup in the state of Texas, or at least in North Texas, because it's got several hundred members. We have maybe 8 of us that show up regularly.
Yeah.
And so, by virtue of it being the only dedicated Star Wars RPG meetup in North Texas, it is the largest and the smallest at the same time.
Aha.
Yes, and I'm one of the newer members. I joined or found this group during the dark ages of the coronavirus. So I actually did meet these guys in person until the quarantine lifted. All our games were over Discord.
Hmm. So, like, I know you guys too have expanded though to other games, and I know, like, in some cases, I'm at least partly at fault for that. Um,
There's no fault. There's inspiration.
Yes.
well, yeah, I joke, but uh, like I know Daryl's first experience with Delta Green was actually at my first Gamer Nation Con, where he played it when I ran it. And I know you mentioned that a couple episodes back on your show, and like, to me, that was also like, and I've mentioned this before, like I think everyone that GMs struggles with some level of GM anxiety. And when through whatever communications, Daryl, you told me, oh yeah, we're gonna buy this and play it in our group. And I was like, well, okay, that means I did at least a decent enough job running the game that they want to play it.
Absolutely.
Very
Absolutely.
much
I
so.
ran that I ran that same intro game for them, for the group, and they all loved it. And Nick had played an earlier edition of Delta Green before and had been trying to explain it to us.
Hmm. Well, he must have played the original version then, because it originally, and this was actually the first real RPG campaign I ever joined back in the mid to late '90s, because it was originally a semi-official third-party supplement for fifth edition Call of Cthulhu.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think he had, and he told us about it several times. We're like, well, that sounds cool. And then when we saw your listing, Stephanie and I were like, okay, yeah, we're gonna play this, and we played it, loved it. I ran that same one shot for the group, and now we're a dozen or so sessions into a campaign that Nick is running using the Impossible Landscapes book as the backbone. But since Impossible Landscapes has gaps between the 3 parts of the
Basically a time
storyline
jump.
of huge time jumps, Robert and I are going to be doing essentially Monster of the Week
One shots
episodes.
between every year.
Yeah,
That's cool though. That's a fun way to do things, like
Yes. It's on a not a well, I wouldn't say it's on hiatus. We just haven't gotten back to it in a while because we've had a lot of other stuff, good stuff that's been
yeah,
coming
we
forward.
we had a busy winter where we did our annual bad movie night, and then
We
we
tortured
were
ourselves.
full steam ahead prepping for the con, since we had a couple of ambitious games.
Usually
Mhm.
people play test stuff for the convention. I envy you.
Well, Nick and I knew
Well,
that
the
we
Alien
had to.
game, it took him 3 times to get a playtest going.
Yeah, the Alien game, it took us 3 times to get a playtest with enough people to make it feasible. Because
Yeah.
since it was a 2-table game, we needed a minimum of 4 players for the playtest to run all 6 PCs each at the 2 tables, a total of 12 PCs.
Yeah.
Like asking one person to do 6 PCs is a lot.
Yeah.
And
And even in the playtest, we had to double up.
yeah, we ended up with 6 players, which was fine, but it got the job done.
Yeah, and it was still fun, like horribly fun. I punched an alien with one uppercut and killed it.
Ah, there you go. No, and like I joke about the playtesting, right? Because one, you guys having played with me, I am very much an improv heavy GM in the first place, and then combine that with my attention span slash schedule, etc. I just like I would have loved to have play tested the Genesis game I ran for you guys just because it was kind of experimental in the setup, but I didn't get a chance. So I figure if you're going to do weird Genesis slash narrative dice stuff, GNC is probably the best place to do it because
Oh, sure.
chances are you're not
Yes,
going to be
very
the
much
most
so.
knowledgeable person on the system that sits down at the table.
Sure.
Oh yeah, and your Genesis game was awesome. Slayer Industries is awesome. That'll be down the road. I gotta deal with this stuff first, so I can't add another one onto my list.
I've got plans for you, boy.
Oh
But part of
boy.
the reason I chose that was one, it's a game I've owned for a while, and like I could show. Well, we don't do a video element to the podcast yet, although we did just launch a YouTube channel. So anyone who wants to listen to the show on YouTube, go search me and Steve RPGs on YouTube, and you'll find us there. But anyway,
I'm doing.
those you guys have seen that book. The artwork for that game is too cool not to show off.
Oh
Oh
yeah.
yes, it was. Yeah, and you even said it started out as art, not a game.
Yeah, well, yeah, and to make it really really short, the game basically grew out of the sketch work of Dave Alsop, who's the primary artist for the game, one of the original devs, even for the first edition back in the 90s. And I think at the time they were working for either Cubicle 7 or GW, and that probably would have been in the early days of the 40K lines. I don't know exactly when that was coming out, but like it's this weird it self-describes as splatterpunk, which is actually very on brand, but it's kind of like I used to describe it as a heavy metal sci-fiber punk. And I know, Robert, you having played it, that to me seems very apt.
It's I give it some connections, not exactly, but it's definitely cyberpunk. It has like Warhammer 40K elements and like the grim dark type of thing, but it also has the corporation element from cyberpunk. It's a nice mix between all of that, gritty horror, splash punk, like you say, kind of a even like a sci-fi Mad Max in some sense.
In a sense, yeah. It's and we didn't get into it there, but the world lore in the book is just delightfully twisted and like there's a lot there to dig into for just being a single book.
Yeah, my favorite thing is still how you said ammo is more expensive because melee fighting gets more ratings.
That, and that's literally like there is, and it's in the book. There is a in-world thing called the bullet tax, which was put in so you got more melee action because it gets better ratings.
Yeah, but just those little
That's
things
awesome.
that flesh out a world.
Yeah, it is. It really is. And but I don't know. We're getting a little bit here, there, and wherever, but that's what we do. So like, yeah, what if short pitch? What can people expect to find on your show?
Short pitch, you can find us discussing topics that both players and GMs are going to find useful in making their games better. And we will occasionally punctuate that with highlighting a specific system for an episode, like we've done Star Wars. The most recent episode, we highlighted Alien, and we already have an eye towards, since Free League just finished the Kickstarter for the Evolved edition of Alien, down the line in the fall, when that actually releases, we're going to do an episode kind of comparing the two editions of Alien. And we will also occasionally punctuate that with, there are plenty of Reddits and YouTube channels and whatnot of RPG horror stories, and those are very entertaining to listen to sometimes.
But they're a dime a dozen.
They're a dime a dozen, so we occasionally punctuate with episodes that we call RPG glory stories, where something that was super awesome at the table, a player was very impressive, or go ahead, Robert.
Yeah, player was very impressive, or one roll did something really unique, or in Nick's instance, a set piece became a campaign ender. But yeah, we're mostly, if you wanted to figure out kind of how a game system works, like the bare bones, we've talked about that. But we mainly talk about concepts that help make both the GM and player mesh well together and hopefully create a good cohesive group. And we have a reoccurring thing that'll come out in the future or be amended in the future of our Session Zero manifesto, which we launched a few episodes back. And then as we go down in the future, we'll amend it and come back to it, just adding our thoughts to it.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Yeah, that was a really good episode. And the thing, like, I wish I had known about Session Zeros long before I found out about them, because it can really do so much for a game.
Yes, I've been very blessed that I've been in groups where that has always been a thing. Session Zero.
But now I know where I was going before I sidetracked myself. I think the one thing that makes your show kind of different in perspective is that all three of you GM, but you all like kind of play together, at least loosely. So like sometimes you might even co-GM a game, but like, and the impression I get kind of from the outside is that Star Wars is kind of your central game. But aside from that, like, I know it's been mentioned that Robert, you run Cyberpunk, and Daryl, I know you do like some others, like some more.
He does Walking Dead
stuff.
Okay. I do Walking Dead.
So like you all kind of have your specialty kind of off the center, and so it creates, I think, a neat perspective where you can all kind of speak as players and give the player side of perspective of when one of you is talking about something you do as a GM, the other two can like chime in and give the other side of the table perspective for the same idea, which I think can be really valuable. But it's not always, it's a rotating table, so to speak, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. And we all have our different styles, and we also, because we just play so much together, we've gotten kind of that intrinsic knowledge of how each of us play as a character, as well as our other members in our group.
Yeah.
So it's just been very good on the cohesion. We know how this person may act in this situation or that situation, and we also know that we have all of our strengths and weaknesses as a GM and a player, and we can give constructive criticism back and forth to just make our games even better.
Yeah, and it's like that's the thing too, is like I got a little bit of a taste of that, if you will, because in the strange happening of things, I actually managed to be GM'd by, GM4, and be a player alongside all three of you at this year's Gamer Nation Con. Some sort of weird Steve GNC hat trick.
Yes. Yeah, and all of it was a lot of fun. But yeah, we've been very lucky since we branched out from just Nick's Star Wars meetup to how we roll gaming, in that we've been able to periodically we pull in a new player here and there. So we have that nucleus of the core group, the ones that we tried to drive you mad.
I keep coming back. It's not working, or it's working too well.
We say that same thing to Nick too, because we're at the point that all of our games are hosted at Nick's house right now because Nick has much space.
Yes, and
Mhm.
also because Nick wants to be in a player in our campaigns. So the one I
but
was running where he didn't want to be a player was at my house, but I put that on hiatus for a while. So yeah, we're all at Nick's now.
Yeah, when Nick doesn't have to, Nick doesn't like to leave home. So,
Yes,
I
very
can
much so.
appreciate that.
and since he has plenty of space and he has plenty of books for nearly every system, it's a great central spot. Plus, a couple of our players are further out location wise, so he is more central to everyone.
Yes.
Mhm.
And
But
I won't drop his name, but we actually did just get a new player a week ago.
yep, and he
Cool.
has already signed up for several other games. We are looking forward to having him in more games. But we've
Yep.
been lucky since we started How We Roll that we've been able to start pulling in here and there a new player here, a new player there, and they may only be interested in one particular campaign, but that's part of the
Appeal.
the the appeal. Yes, thank you. I was blanking on the word of having all of the different games that we play because we can't decide what system we want to play because there's so many out there that we like, including a bunch that we own and haven't put on the table yet because we have
And
so many ongoing campaigns.
and of course we go to the convention and then we see something new. Like I jumped on Slay. I know Daryl jumped on Marvel. I forget the campaign name,
Marvel
but like
Multiverse.
Marvel Multiverse. He was because he after that convention he's like, I'm getting it. We're playing it.
And I was very impatiently waiting the deluxe starter set that I had pre-ordered that finally showed up last week. So
Well, let's see.
it's only 6 months late.
Sitting behind me in the chair is the Savage Rips box set, the Twilight 2000 box set.
Got that one.
And then behind elsewhere, there's the Monty Python game. The Tokyo Otherworlds Kickstarter came in. I've got so much stuff laying around that I want to run that I haven't gotten to that I've made myself stop looking at Kickstarter.
Yeah, I've
Yeah, we
I've
have
got the
so
Twilight
much.
2000 starter sitting up on my shelf that I'm already an admitted mark for Free League, and I was in a local store and the guy was talking it up, and I was just ring me up. Come on.
Yeah, but yeah, How We Roll Gaming is a really good place for either to run campaigns in new settings, or even if we just find an RPG we're interested in, we'll just like, hey, this weekend I'll run a one shot of this. We'll see how we like it.
Yeah, and I think that's a cool thing if you can find that in your area, or even I guess if you can put together even an online club that does stuff like that, it's really cool. And the revolving GM makes that even better, right? Because so to speak, everybody gets to play, and you also get like you said, and I think this is something that a lot of people don't what do you want to say? Don't understand in a way is that you can learn a lot by being a player as a GM or
Absolutely.
vice versa. And the
Absolutely.
fact that you guys get to get different perspectives of, like you've got at least I know of 3 different GMs. You know what I mean? So like you get to collect so much more information and see stuff. And like I think some of the biggest things I think I've ever learned are just those things you didn't even realize you didn't know until you see someone else do it or hear someone else say it. You know what I mean?
Oh
It's
yeah.
definitely been eye opening as a GM, and it's also been a benefit that we see most of the same people every time we play. You definitely saw that when you GM'd for us with the Bigfoot Genesis of how sometimes we could just do stuff just by communicating like telepathically, like I know we're gonna do this, so we're gonna do this.
Well, right, and I want to bring up something there that and I think I mentioned it to you guys at the table. There was a point in that adventure where, had it not been your whole crew sitting at the table, I probably would have stopped what was going on.
Yeah, I
It
remember you
at just
mentioning that.
a normal
Yeah.
convention table, and I literally almost started to say something, and I went, wait a minute. these are people that play together all the time. They are friends. I can tell from how they interact. I'm going to let it go because, well, I don't know what their limits are. They do.
Yes.
Yeah, that is a nice benefit to the group. And, we toned it down a lot for the con because, we're around, nominally functional human beings. Uh and and during no, it was during Bigfoot, Betsy was still feeling good. So when you get me, my wife Stephanie, and Betsy all at the table together, unless we conscious effort like we did at the con, all it takes is one wrong turn of phrase for us to dive straight for the gutter.
Whereas
Well,
you
but no,
saw
like,
Betsy and I are good partners in mischief when we have a concept.
well, but like, too, and to be fair, I ran that session specifically for you guys, partially because, well, long backs, like there was communication happening before the convention and all that stuff. But like you guys, I ran Havoc Brigade for you guys last year, or
Mhm.
mostly you guys. I'm still not sure if the other two people at the table have fully recovered, especially the one guy. Um, but it was it was originally going to be like a custom system inspired by Havoc Brigade, and I realized I was running out of time to get the kinks ironed out of that. And so I really like the idea of what happens if we turn RPG players loose in a finding Bigfoot expedition Bigfoot type of setting.
Mhm.
But I'm like, how can I do that? Because, okay, let's be honest. You guys would have had tremendous fun if you were all playing Bigfoot Hunters, because I'm
Very much
sure
so.
lots of goofy stuff would have happened.
I don't know
But
what you're talking about.
Yeah,
but
we totally
I
didn't have
felt like
fun.
in an RPG context, if I go, this side of the table is Bigfoot, and this side of the table is people hunting for Bigfoot, well, that's just gonna you know, go even crazier and more fun.
Oh,
So
absolutely. That's sign me up.
And it was awesome. We got demonic ponies, possession.
the pony, you just thought the ponies were demonic.
We thought the ponies had their souls stolen by the evil Nick character.
Who just was a My Little Pony collector because Nick is a My Little Pony collector.
But it's like
Yep.
that's the fun of it, right? Like I literally the setup was I made 6 characters, went these 3 are a Bigfoot research team. This is a family Bigfoot unit. You're in the woods in like Northern California, which I just use because I go, hey, Endor from Return of the Jedi. That's where you're at, and everyone has an image in their head instantly, and away we go.
For
You
sure.
know, so like to a certain point, the thing I think that I did that it was sort of experimental was that we actually had 2 story point pools going. There was the one between the 2 sides of the table, and then there was the one between the table and the GM. And originally, the concept was that maybe at some point, black government helicopters show up, and I absorb the between the 2 sides of the table pool into the traditional pool to kind of symbolize, okay, now you need to work together. And that never happened in either session I ran of it, because in the first session, when I was going to do that, the the 2 sides of the table were starting to head in opposite directions, and so I was really afraid that if I did that, I would now be running 2 sessions at the table simultaneously, but they would no longer be interacting with each other.
Yeah.
So like it was like,
Yeah, we
oh,
get it.
that's not the spirit, right? And in your guys' case, it was more what was going on was too interesting to mess with. And
we
yes, I am serious about writing a sequel for you guys for next year.
we
We're
bring
looking
our own
forward to
brand
it.
of chaos with us. No one needs to bring their own bring chaos. We bring it with us.
But like I had a blast playing with you guys as in the Delta Green thing. I mean, yes, I shot Bob Ross.
Yeah,
I
you were a
know there
blast
was nothing to
there.
be helped, but and yes, I chaos monkeyed the end of your session, Rob, and I kind of
Oh,
apologized, but not really.
it doesn't match what happened in the third with the orb.
No. I was there for it, but yeah, mine was just sort of a weird explanation, excla- exclamation point at the end of the scenario. Not, it all pretty much happened off camera.
Yeah,
and it was great.
I mean
You were
the
awesome.
shenanigans with the orb have given me plenty of podcast post production ammunition, because now every time Nick says the phrase "shake it up," I toss in a stinger of the Cars lyrics.
Mhm. Yes, I noticed.
In fact, I forced him to say "shake it up" in our recording session tonight.
And then in one of our episodes, like Daryl said, the cutaway just really worked when we were talking about Fallout. He just left the clip in.
And that's one I haven't gotten to play. And well, but see, I have a weird thing with Fallout because I just have never, well, not never. It's been a long time since I've been an avid video game player. And so I have no context whatsoever for Fallout. Although what I know of the general premise, it sounds like something that would be right up my alley.
For what it's worth, my entire context with Fallout is knowing that my son has played the games and I watched the show on Amazon,
Aha.
and I'm having a blast.
It's
So,
nuclear Fallout with a very comedic flair. And at least in my personal preference, I love how all the loot is on loot tables.
Robert loves him some loot tables.
Beautiful, beautiful loot tables.
Yeah, so if I know Star Wars is you guys kind of central thing. What would you classify as like your offshoot specialties?
At least for me, definitely leaned heavily into, at least in my opinion, cyberpunk-esque RPGs, because it was Star Wars, but right after that, I ran and I'm still running my cyberpunk Dallas City of Destiny, where you're all just in Dallas during the era of the Red. So I've definitely dived into that. That's helped me look at other cyberpunk SRPGs. And then I
Don't get
know,
me started there. I can give you lists. I
I'll
own
find
many
my.
of them.
Oh, Daryl's helped me in that respect, as you'll see. But
Uh,
and then, of course, at the end of May, I'm gonna dive into, because I played this at the last convention, the Lord of the Rings convention. It was Legend of the Five Rings. So I was just like, it's one of those RPGs that I don't think Daryl and Nick are gonna touch because they're more interested in other stuff or they'd want to play into it. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna run it, see where we go.
I am dead set on playing Legend of the Five Rings. I've wanted to play it forever. I have everything that FFG/Edge has published for it. I have never played it.
Yes, and that's why I was like, to quote Thanos, I'll do it myself.
Now, I did play an earlier edition for like 2 or 3 sessions like 30 years ago. Now
I
get off of
played
my
like
lawn.
a little bit of a one shot as a pickup game on Sunday in the Lord of the Rings convention. We didn't get to finish, but it was still enough to be like, I like it.
And I guess my secondary specialty is anything, as long as I enjoy the game. If I tend to come up with kind of a high concept elevator pitch for my campaign and then run from there. So I guess that's where mine comes in, is coming up with the elevator pitches. Like Walking Dead. My Walking Dead campaign is called Muerto Las Vegas. And the players are a group of survivors who, they did have a haven that fell apart due to disease. But they heard that there is an actual functioning pocket of civilization in Las Vegas. So they've gotten to Las Vegas and found that, well, yeah, there is, but the pockets of people have taken up residence in the casinos on the strip, and different elements of the society have taken on the theming of those hotels. Like
cool.
there's a military officer who had come in from Nellis Air Force Base during the apocalypse and was trying to restore order, and he has basically set up shop in Caesar's Palace and declared himself the Emperor of Las Vegas, and he has a military and police force behind him to back him up that are now modeled after Centurions.
Oh, well, that's a little bit of a spoiler there, Daryl.
Yeah, I mean, there have been hints.
Yeah,
There have
but
been
no,
hints.
total serious right now. I'll say your Walking Dead campaign is my favorite right now because I just love my character. I love what we're doing.
And Nick has discovered that the Luxor has been turned into the Emperor's prison.
Yeah, he's learned that maybe when you're getting interviewed by the local rulers, maybe don't mouth off to them or be sarcastic.
He got hauled off to the Luxor. He is now separated from the rest of the party, and he's off in the Luxor. And the guest rooms in the pyramid have been transformed into cells because then if a prisoner gets out of line, they pull them out of the cell and just chuck them over the balcony of the hallway down onto the mezzanine.
Yeah. And basically, some of our group are in the high class places. I and Betsy's character are in a kind of a middle/low class place, and Nick's in jail as slave labor.
And the person running the Bellagio controls the water flow to the strip. So that is kind of a high class place because they have the fountains going as a show of their status in the apocalypse.
And then, of course, anybody outside the strip is either basically stragglers or bandits, at least by the strip standards.
And then the other campaign that I currently run, it is a Star Wars campaign, but it is also high concept in that the PCs are the equivalent of a local level rock band. And they travel the galaxy from gig to gig, and occasionally those travels cover work that they do for the Rebel Alliance.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually, at some point down the line, they're going to have to make the decision, do we accept the rich and famous contract and become the huge stars that we want to be? Or do we keep fighting the good fight, which we won't be able to do when we have that big of a spotlight on us?
And then, of
Yeah.
course, we have our mutual dual GM campaigns. For me, it's me and Nick doing Legacy of the Force, which is basically set after about 7 years after the Battle of Exegol. Basically, the galaxy's healing. There's unexpected peace for like the first time ever since the Clone Wars. And then first they were experiencing something, just like traveling hyperspace, trying to chart out the unknown regions. But then strange things started happening. Imperial remnants were working with First Order remnants, and then there are these weird beings that act, at least in their character's perspective, as Sith, but they don't fully act like what you'd expect of the Sith because the Jedi and Sith are now common knowledge in this era. And now they're just starting to piece together like what is going on, what is happening in the galaxy right now, because something doesn't feel right.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have our Monster of the Week stuff that Robert and I are going to be doing in the Big Delta Green campaign. I took dibs on 1999 because I have an idea for Y2K in Delta Green.
Yeah, because this goes on Multiple Lance case, which starts, I believe, in 95, and then the time jump to 2015. So we've got 20 years to work with. We're alternating years. Like Daryl said, I'm giving him that year. We're going to collab on a certain year with a certain event that'll take place. But and then we'll keep going from there.
Mm-hmm. I mean, like, I just think it's, what you guys have going is a really neat thing and something, for people to aspire to. I mean, I don't know if that's, but your show is really cool too. And like I pick up stuff from you guys and go, oh, hey, I hadn't thought about that. I tend to do a lot of what you're talking about though, Daryl. Well, I get a high concept, and then I start looking at my collection and going, well, what system should I use to run this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or
I guess I'm kind of the inverse. I'll find a system like, oh, I really want to run something in this. Now I got to think of something.
I do that too, but I tend more to come up with a high concept and then go, oh wait, what would do this well?
yeah.
You know what I mean? either.
Yeah, and we've all figured out kind of what our strengths are. Like Nick's a very heavy storyteller. I found out and been told I make really good combat encounters, so I've flavored those a lot. Daryl, I would say, is really good at, like you said, high concepts and piecing together a campaign that everyone will enjoy.
Yeah, I did a limited campaign a couple of years ago. Is it that long now? I guess it is. Where I had been, like you were saying, Steve, I had been trying for years to figure out I want to do a Les Miserables inspired game, and I kind of want to do it in Star Wars, but I don't know how to do it. And then one day I suddenly had that epiphany, and oh, it starts right after Return of the Jedi, and it's on Coruscant, and the lower levels of Coruscant are where all of our Les Mis style action happens. And so I had a 12-part limited campaign of Star Wars Les Miserables.
Yeah, and it was interesting because I got to play a new character concept because I played a guy who was a pacifist who over time ended up being a kleptomaniac.
And sometimes that type of character that is very not your typical thing can be so much fun, and like you discover things you hadn't thought about.
Oh,
You know what I mean?
absolutely.
Yeah, it was fun, and we got we have plenty of glory stories there that we can touch on future episodes of our own podcast.
Yeah,
I
right
I
now
have this
in
story I need to tell you guys sometime
ooh.
that is kind of both an RPG horror story and a glory story.
Well,
Let's
we've
just say, and I'll tease it. And actually, way back at like episode 18 of this podcast, I tell the story. It's called "The Night That Bubba Went Crazy," but I will tease it by just telling you
Episode
that
18,
it
got
was
it.
a. Well, I may be wrong on the number, but it's in that era. It's a self-inflicted TPK that I have contacted in recent years, and mind you, this happened in approximately 1997, and all of them still remember that night, actually quite fondly.
right on. Right on. Yep. I like when I can, every so often I will play against a character type that I normally play, and those do end up being my favorite characters. In Star Wars, it's quite often that even if I'm not a Jedi, I'm near that kind of part of the spectrum in Star Wars. But Nick was running a rebellion campaign, and I was a spy who was a legit double agent with the Empire. He was a card carrying member of Imperial intelligence, but really worked for Rebel intelligence
Hmm.
and was not shy about doing up close wet work. Totally unlike every character that I normally play. And I had a ball.
Hmm.
I had a ball, and it surprised other players in it. And like at one point, some village that we were in, there's a self-appointed warlord who's in charge of it, and Imperials start attacking, and I was like, yeah, you need to let your people fight with us. And he didn't want to do it, and I convinced him to do it, and I put my arm around him. I was like, great, I knew that you would finally, see the reason in this. Then just reached up and slit his throat so that his enslaved townspeople would be free. And the rest of the players just stopped for a second. And it's like they're like, that's not what you normally do. Yeah, I know. That's the point.
I know, and my favorite character has been in, at least Star Wars wise, has been in Daryl and Nick's Far Orbit. It's a guy named Verstanza, and because I mostly play like combat oriented people, but
Hmm.
he's my talker guy. He cannot fight, but he can talk, and he's got charm, negotiation, leadership, and coercion. And a session in there caused Daryl and Nick to make a home rule for skating tirade, but he's still my favorite character.
We built an overpowered adversary to specifically counter that talent that his character can do by making her deaf. And he
So I,
still found a way to shit talk her
I wrote-
into submission.
Yeah, I wrote stuff on a data pad to the point where Daryl and Nick had to discuss, can she read?
Oh, jeez.
Until eventually I willed her down up to where I was just like, forget it. And I just tossed a thermal detonator at her and knocked her out.
Oh, jeez. Yeah,
But
no,
that was
it's-
after, in a previous session, I knocked out 4 death troopers and an Imperial officer with just my words.
Oh, wow. Yeah. See, like, I don't know. I really want to play Star Wars. My first RPG experience was West End Star Wars. But I literally basically only get to play Star Wars at Gamer Nation Con, unless I may end up running it some here locally, but I haven't. I have played a game or two at a local convention as well. But like, and I find in convention games, what I generally do is I find some element of the character and just really lean on that and kind of exaggerate it. But I think for convention games that works well. I know I probably took your S4 GMG droid in a direction that was slightly unanticipated not this past year, but the year before.
But it was so much fun.
And to me, right, it felt like, and if you really think about it, Sam and R2 are a lot the same. It's just that R2 is a little more savage, but he doesn't come across as savage because he's a cute little white trash can.
Yeah, but he is the foulest mouthed cast member because every single thing that he says is bleeped.
Right?
And this is canon too. Sacred Island. Watch the language.
And Disney basically agreed with you and brought in Chopper.
Oh, oh yeah. Well, that was the other inspiration there, right? Because let's be honest, Chopper is a little asshole.
Chopper is a war criminal.
Oh yeah.
If he wasn't on the winning side, he'd been scrapped by now.
But I mean, like, to me, that's where the other thing that's fun is finding that maybe that different perspective on the character and just leaning into it and seeing what happens, right? Like, because I know that's really in the, I know you guys talked about it a little bit on your show in the finale of your Delta Green game. I was playing the SWAT officer who also was pyrophobic, and everything is happening is fire. And it just so happened I hit my break point as the fire scene is really building. And so I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, okay, this is a character who's going to be very duty driven to try and help an emergency situation. He's also extremely afraid of fire. What's the reaction going to be that like kind of satisfies both of those things? And so I'm like, I know. We got to expose the fire, but we don't want to get directly into it. So I'm like, I'm going to jump at the fire truck and literally just try to ram the RVs out of the circle. And of course, he's kind of snapped. So the outriggers are down because it's a ladder truck, or that's what we were told. So it's not working, but he's just got this fire truck pegged on the limiter, and it didn't actually work out. But it was like, to me, that's kind of a fun thing to have in an RPG, right? Where you're going, well, these things are happening and they're kind of diametrically opposed, because just the pyrophobe is going to be like, well, I'm just going to GTFO, right? But that doesn't mesh with the core of him being a SWAT officer and I would assume rather dedicated to helping with big problems as a Delta Green agent. So like, how do you make this irrational fear of fire and there's a giant fireball and trying to do something good all happen at once? I don't know. To me, it made sense. I don't know.
No, that's
it makes
great.
perfect
Great
sense.
analyzing on a character you were playing as and how you wanted to make him out to be.
Yeah.
Because like we like to say on our podcast, we always emphasize there's no wrong way to play a character.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing, right? Like, it may not be, and this is where con games get weird too, right? Because what I envisioned as the GM when I built the character and how you interpret it could be very different. And that doesn't mean that either of us are right or wrong.
Yeah. I mean,
we
mentioned this when we were.
Yeah, go ahead. I think I know what you're about to say.
Oh, I was going to say, like when we did our episode on building or creating a con adventure, creating a con session. when building the pre-gen for a convention game, you're trying to build in plenty of hooks for a player to pick up and run with, but once they pick it up, the tiny hook may be what grabs their attention, and that's great.
Yep.
Take it in a direction that I didn't anticipate, because that's fun.
Or we make it in a way we didn't anticipate. Because, like we said, when we did our Delta Green characters, we thought would be fun to make a fireman. Because I'm sure most people at the con would be like, "Well, this is Delta Green. Why would I want to be a fireman instead of like a SWAT officer or an occultist?" But we were like, inside joke. A lot of this is going to involve fire, so maybe in the future they're like, "Oh, we really actually need that fireman." But then when we statted him out, we just ended up accidentally making Buck from 911, and he was the first one anybody chose.
But yeah, no, like as we were talking, right? I think like it's just such a fun hobby, and there's so many different ways to explore it, and like that's what you guys talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
we always emphasize it's definitely an expensive hobby, so make sure you get your priorities straight.
Well, yes and no, right? Like I don't know, it can be expensive, but it
It could
doesn't.
be worse. It could be
Right?
Warhammer.
Yes, we don't even touch Warhammer.
We buy books, not little tiny pieces of plastic. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Well, Nick, maybe not Nick. You should see his collection.
N- Nick is addicted to minis, and I feed the addiction because I have a 3D printer and subscriptions to several Patreons for minis, and I feed his addiction by I print some out and bring him a handful at a time. And
Yeah, like Alien, like that Alien King he loves showing off. I know
yeah,
he had to order that exclusive. I have no idea how much that cost him.
well, he found a retailer in England who was going out of business. And so he ordered, I don't know how many miniatures from this guy in England. They came in like 3 waves. And I'll admit, kind of jealous, because neither he nor I got in on Alien early enough to be in on the original Kickstarter. But one of the exclusive decks of cards that came with the Kickstarter, this guy in England just threw into the mix with everything
geez.
that Nick ordered. And it's like, I want that. But
Or no, you said some guy was giving you like his huge collection of X-wing fighters.
yeah. Yeah, one of our fellow Gamer Nation Con attendees who lives 2 minutes, it turns out, from our house
Oh, geez.
was looking to get rid of their X-Wing collection, and I was like, I am cash strapped, or I would do it. He's like, no, I just want to make sure that they have a good home, and I know that it's you, and I know that you're nearby, so come get them.
Oh wow.
I was like, okay, and they're all right now still sitting in the hallway right outside my computer room because I need to inventory them and find some place to put them. And Stephanie was like, "Where are you going to put all these?" And like, I don't know, but they were free.
Right? Like that's a powerful argument. But like look, as you get deeper into it, it does become expensive in a way. But like
At least the
it's
books.
more it, but they're books, right? And the thing is it's like it's kind of like tools, right? You buy the
Mhm.
tool and then you can use it over and over and over again.
Yep.
Yep,
You know,
absolutely.
at least it's not like drugs where you spend your money on the drug and then you use it and now you need to go buy more.
Yep. That very much reminds me of something that I said, I had a really bad breakup years and years and years ago, and I was like, I could, start drinking or start smoking or something, or I could just pour more money into my comic collecting. And that comic is still there for me to reread after I read it the first time.
Right?
So there we go, more comics.
All right. Well, it sounds like we're wrapping down here. You guys have anything more you want to say on your show? Tell people where to find it, etc.
You can find it from the main hub on our website at howwerollgaming.com. It's also, like you said, on YouTube. Just do a search for How We Roll Gaming, and also wherever podcasts are. I'm going to make the same joke I did on our show earlier tonight. I guess not sold, but distributed. Um, and then we also have a sister podcast, Casual Nerdity, that is not gaming related, so it's not on the D20 network, but it's pop culture related. And so far, all but one episode has been focused on one of the members of our group, Lauren, has never watched the Clone Wars animated series before. Nick and
What's
I
wrong with
have.
him?
Absolutely nothing, has just never watched it. So we
I'm joking,
are.
of course.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And I mean, that's the only thing wrong. Hadn't watched Clone Wars yet.
He hadn't even seen the movies, so we're going in chronological order. So he has to
Yeah.
watch Clone Wars before episode 3.
Yeah, and so we're doing for Nick and I a rewatch of Clone Wars. For Lauren, it is a first watch, and we are occasionally so far we have been joined by Betsy. I know at some point Robert wants to join us for certain episodes. We're just going over reactions and observations to Clone Wars, and Nick and I recently did an episode after seeing Thunderbolts, reviewing Thunderbolts, and we're going to have Superman and Fantastic Four coming in the summer, and we have other ideas for sub-series that can be found also wherever podcasts are, Casual Nerdity, or the website casualnerdity.com.
Yeah, and of course, if you ever want to support us, we also got a Patreon. Just go to Patreon, type in How We Roll Gaming. Our tier start as low as $2. Then we got some benefits depending on what tier you choose, and then soon be launching our own merch store. Daryl has been busy making all these designs. It's actually a problem. He needs to get some sleep, but still.
Yeah, when I found our new merch store, I was up till 2 a.m. working on designs because it was so much fun and easy.
Cool. I need to do merch for us at some point, but I don't know crap about graphics, so that makes
He
it a
can
little more
recommend you the website.
I can recommend you the website. It's super easy, and I can help you out with graphics.
I may have to take you up with that at some point. Or if we ever go deeper into YouTube, I may have to hit you up for some pointers or tips or help or any number of things.
You got it. Just say the word.
But with that, I think maybe we kind of wrap stuff up. I do want to say thank you to you guys for coming in on short notice, because I literally asked you like a few hours before we sat down to record because of circumstances. But
It's our pleasure. Thanks for having us.
so thank you for that. But with that, I think it's time for Game of the Week.
Game of the week. Game of the week.
So I know you guys know how we play Game of the Week. So what I really need to know is who wants to go first.
I'll let Robert go first.
Yes, because we both knew exactly which one I would choose. Because one, Daryl actually pointed this out to me, because it was actually when he went to My Mini Wars, he found this and it was like, yeah, Robert would want this, because it's called Katana Raw. It's basically cyberpunk and ancient Japanese folklore world meshed together. Like there are people, because it's like set in like 30 something, where it's technically advanced. They actually have spaceships and they're traveling the world. There's alien species, cybernetics. But then there are also people who still stick to the traditional ways. Like there's a huge Shintoism. There are people who still use like farm tools, and the biggest they get are like tractors, but they don't do any cybernetic stuff. There's literal demons, because Jigoku, or Japanese hell, is a thing here. It's actually a big
Mhm.
problem, because everything is split on these like 5 islands, and one of them is basically a portal to hell that basically was abandoned.
Do you have a
Everything's
link
ruled.
for this somewhere? Because I want to see this. Just drop it in the green room.
I do. And the art is amazing. Very
Ah,
amazing.
okay. That's why I couldn't find it. I was not spelling it right. Katana Ra, not Katana
Yes.
Raw.
It's basically you could be a samurai, gunslinger, sumo wrestler, this thing called a Nexus Jacker, which is basically this world's version of a Netrunner from Cyberpunk. There's a bunch of clan politics, because Japanese clans are still a thing, and then they also own corporations that rule the world. The emperor is basically the leader of the entire world, because basically how it works is like the world's spread out, and Japanese culture and everything basically became the entire world culture
Mm-hmm.
somewhat. And so it's just a mix between if you want to be a cyborg who also worships the Shinto gods, you could be. If you wanted to be some guy who still wears samurai armor, wielding a katana, fighting demon possessed cyborg gangsters, and basically this world's version of Night City, you could do that as well. And it's just a big rabbit hole you could go into and just heart's content.
This looks cool as shit. I'm not gonna lie.
Oh, the art is amazing. Whoever did this deserves all the money they got.
Yeah,
And and there's a core rulebook companion to this, and it even has more pages than the core rulebook.
Oh wow.
yeah, I went into a small local store that is nearby that I go into occasionally, and um, guys always talking your ear off because there's hardly ever anybody in there. And he's like, "Oh, you got to see this!" And he showed me the book, and I was like, "Robert needs to see this because it is beautiful."
He showed it to me, and I think 3 or 4 days later, I just decided to go there just to peruse. Got both books, and then just said in the Discord, got them.
Well, that's cool. Yeah, that looks really cool.
So yeah, if you ever want to be a cyborg samurai, Katana Ra.
Cool. All right, Daryl, you or me next?
I'll go.
All right.
Inspired by a few episodes ago, I loved werewolves that you had on a few episodes ago, and inspired by that, I have Cats of Cthulhu,
Aha, I think I've seen this.
and they have within the past 6 months they released a 10th anniversary compendium of it, and basically you are cats. There are 30 different kinds of cats that you can play. There are unsuspecting humans, mice, dogs, fish, birds. You can liberate treats, demolish toys, and all sorts of challenges um, in order to the cats seem ordinary. But they're fighting conspiracies of cosmic chaos, and they have mighty spirits that they fight, like gnarly Ahotep, Fat Frogus, and Hasper of the Yellow Eye, and they're trying to inspire their cultists to destroy civilization. But that's where all the comfy furniture is, man. So, Cats of Cthulhu. It's $20 for the PDF of the 10th anniversary compendium, or you can get a full hardcover and PDF on drive-through.
That looks like a lot of fun.
Absolutely, it sure does.
Oh, I'm sure
And
Betsy wants to play both werewolf and Cats of Cthulhu.
oh, Betsy has said in no uncertain terms that she will reimburse me for werewolves if I buy it, and ask her to. She already has promised to reimburse me for the $4 PDF of Heckin' Good Doggos.
See, this is where gaming gets expensive, folks. If you listen to a podcast like this where we tell you about these goofy, weird little games that we find, and you go, so this segment is how I discovered Havoc Brigade.
And Stephanie has like 5 different Havoc Brigade ideas that she wants to unleash on our group after playing it last year with you.
I know I planted one in her for next year's con, so I don't know if she's talked to you about that yet or not.
Yeah. Yeah, and she's also had an idea that she was going to do for our group around Halloween last year, where all of the characters are slasher movie slashers.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Get what the other one is that she came up with. I know there's at least one more.
I also know on RPG Day, that one with the raccoon, she also wants to do that one.
Yes. I forget what it's called, but last year on Free RPG Day, there was some raccoon game.
Oh,
See,
here it
was
is.
in there.
Yeah, it's oh crap, they actually made the title weird.
I know
I think it's Garbage Glory.
Okay, not heard of that one, but
Because you're basically
That
raccoons going around on adventures, and raccoons like to get in garbage, so garbage glory.
well, of course. I think Grant Howitt did one called Trash Pandas. That's a reskin of Honey Heist that I've heard is quite fun too. So, all right. So if that's yours, I'm going to actually kind of cheat here and go back to one that actually came up in Game of the Week a long time ago, and actually, to my knowledge, holds this distinction of being the only game to ever get stolen in Game of the Week.
Oh,
Because I was going to bring it up, and the person who was the guest on that week's episode brought it up instead. I have since gotten to
how
play the
dare you?
game, meet the creator, and I bought the special edition hardcover because he had
Ooh,
it at the con. So this is a game,
ooh.
and so you got to play Slay Industries at Gamer Nation Con. This was almost the game I ran instead of it. I just dropped the link in the green room. This is a game called Neon Lords of the Toxic Wasteland. And so what this is well, here, I'll just read the first lines of the drive-through description. A gonzo vomit punk post-apocalyptic cassette futurism tabletop RPG. A visceral mashup of 80s and 90s pop culture mixed in a grimdark blender and barfed onto the table. It is very OSR. It is based off the BX rule set. Half medieval fantasy, but think Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles meets Mad Max meets Escape from New York.
Right
Yeah,
on.
that cover definitely looks like that.
Randy Savage is a god, or the memory of Randy Savage is a god.
Archie
Okay.
Gems is incense.
Here's the thing. This is one of those games that, like, internally takes itself very seriously, but externally is just a over the top theme thing. And I will say the reason I didn't run it at Gamer Nation Con was because I started reading the book and went, I don't have the time to develop something to do this justice to show it off. You know, like, and I'll say that Rob, as a cyberpunk fan, right? Have you read much 2020? I know you mentioned Red. Have you read 2020 very much?
I've read a little bit of it, especially when Nick said he was going to possibly do one in Britain. I did look at that a little bit, kind of seeing the story, but I have looked at it a little bit.
You know how that book just sort of drips attitude?
Oh, yes, very much so.
Yeah.
This game does that very, very close to that extent. Like it's one of those books where you read it and the art, like if you click the preview, right, you'll see the art style. It's all super
Yes, yeah.
evocative. It's very, very, like I said, it's one of those that from the backed up player perspective is absolutely gonzo and bonkers and hilarious, but like internally it takes itself seriously, which is kind of like this weird dual layer thing, right? Like some of the classes, right? There is the Brudicorn, which is a biomechanical bihorn, which is sort of a two-horned unicorn, right? There's the Cosmic Barbarian. There's Cyberskins, which are bioengineered clones of ex-President Ronald Reagan.
Oh, yes.
There are Holy Smiters. There are Night Stalkers. There are Noise Thrashers, which are kind of a throwback to Rocker Boys from Cyberpunk. I know the one time I played it, I played some sort of crazy ape man that was a lot of fun. It's very Saturday morning cartoon, old school WWF. Like I said, but Mad Max and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles too, kind of,
As,
except
as our
there's not
friend
actual
Betsy
turtles.
would say, they understood the assignment.
And I got to meet Brian Shutter, the creator. He was at a local convention here last fall, and he's a really cool dude. And at some point, I need to get him on. It's just been one of those where I've been busy enough. I haven't reached out to try and to talk to him, but I got to chat with him a bunch, and unfortunately, didn't get to play his game with him. But you know, if he comes back to our local con this year, I'm going to try and do that because why not? But I figured if I put either this or Slay in front of you, Robert, they were going to set a hook in you.
And that is a safe bet. Slay Industries definitely hooked him. I'm surprised he hasn't bought it yet Or have you?
I need to balance out my budget. I'm moving this month, so I have this year, so I have to be careful.
You're being responsible. That's a good RPG person.
Well, I shouldn't have gotten the Katana Raw yet, but I did anyway. So
It was too beautiful.
very much so. The World Book is even better in art.
Yeah, no, but like this is like I said, I have the special edition because it was like $10 more than the basic edition, and he had it on the table at the convention. It's like there's actually an adventure thing inside the slipcover and all kinds of cool stuff. So I kind of was like, well, why not? But yeah, that's Toxic Lords of Neon Lords of the Toxic Wasteland, and I know he's got a bunch of I think like mini supplements and stuff out for it. Maybe like some small adventures. I'm not 100% sure. Right now the PDF is on sale for $10 on drive-through. Let me look and see what else he's got. I know for a while he was physically being distributed through Goodman Games, but I think he may have changed that. So I'm not sure if it's how easy it is to find in print out there. But if I get him on, I'll ask him about that. So, all right. Well, any final thoughts, guys?
I can't think of anything.
Nope. We have discussed a lot today. I think we are good.
All right. Well, again, thank you very much for coming on, especially on short notice.
Glad to do it.
I'm glad to do it again in the future.
Yep.
Go check out How We Roll Gaming. It's a great show. Casual nerdity. Look, we're all nerds. We know it. Some of us are less casual than others, but it's minor distinction. But so yeah, thank you guys very much. And I guess with all that, folks, remember, you can check us out. We also have a Patreon. There's links to that and our various social feeds in the show notes. There's a link to our YouTube channel if you want to check that out. There's also a link to the Discord where you can find and talk with, myself, the other Steve, Daryl and Nick Daryl, Nick, and Robert are all in there now. Whether they answer you or not, I don't know, but that's them.
And on the day.
But yeah, you can find myself, and we've got a pretty cool community of people there. I will say, just a little bit of housekeeping. Currently finished up all the actual play we have in the can. Although we are recording something, I just want to make sure we get enough of it canned before we start releasing it so that, we don't end up having a weird hiccup in the middle of the release schedule on that. So there is more actual play coming if that's one of the things you come to check us out with. And it's something a little different. We've kind of teased at it before, but we're working on it, and I think y'all are going to enjoy it. So with all that, I think it's time to remind everyone to be kind to each other and get out there and play some RPGs.
Intro and outro music by the band 12 Noon. You can email us at meandsteverpg@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter and RPGs. Find us on Facebook at Me and Steve RPG Podcast, on Discord at Me and Steve RPGs, and as always, all of these links are in the show notes. Thank you, and be kind to one another.
How much for the cigar?
Cigar, $20, dog. You gotta go down the street to the store and buy that.